Hey guys, hoping all is well with everybody. In this video we're going to be starting to begin the study guide for chapter 13 on weather. Now, as I've done in previous study guides, what I'm going to do is break it up into two segments. The first part of the study guide is going to be the vocabulary and the definitions of the chapter, and then the second half is going to be the more conceptual ideas and looking at the overall questions that we're trying to answer in just the chapter itself. So the first half will be the vocab and the second half will be the concepts. So let's begin with first defining what weather is. So weather is defined as the atmospheric conditions along with short-term changes at a certain place at a certain time. Okay. So that is weather. So a good starting point is kind of describing what weather is. And it's the atmospheric conditions with gradual changes. It doesn't always, the weather's always changing, so we can't say that it's just something that's static or stays the same. And then it's at a certain place at a certain time. Okay? Let's look at our next definition. Our next definition is air pressure. And air pressure is the force that a column of air supplies on the air or surface below. The force that a column of air supplies on the air or surface below. Okay. One of the things that we'll discover later is the way that we can measure atmospheric pressure is with a device called a barometer. So baro means pressure. It's a prefix for pressure. Okay? Let's look at our next definition. So again, air pressure is just a force that is exerted from a column of air supplied on the air or a surface below. Let's look at our next term, which is the term humidity. Humidity is simply the amount of water vapor in the air. The amount of water vapor in the air. So you guys notice how like sometimes there's very humid days as opposed to just hot days, and when it's really sticky out, that's a humid day. It's when it feels really like the air around you is very moist. So that's the amount of water vapor or moisture in the air, and that's humidity. States or like climates like in Florida, they don't live only where it's very warm and hot. They also live where it's very, very humid. Okay, so that's humidity, the amount of water vapor in the air. Okay, let's look at our next definition. Now, there is a difference between humidity and this next term. This next term is relative humidity. And relative humidity is defined as the amount of water vapor present in the air the amount of water vapor present in the air compared to the maximum amount of water vapor the air could contain at that temperature. Maximum water vapor that could be held at that temperature. That air could contain at that temperature, I'm sorry. Okay, so relative humidity compared to humidity is almost a comparison. So humidity is just the amount of moisture or water vapor in the air. Relative humidity is the comparison from what is in the air in terms of water vapor compared to what it could be at its maximum amount. Okay, so at every temperature there's an amount of water vapor or moisture that can be contained. So it is temperature dependent. Okay. So let's look at our next definition. Our next definition is dew point. And dew point is defined as the temperature of which air is saturated and condensation can occur. Temperature at which air is saturated and condensation can occur. Okay. And we'll go into this a little bit more when we come to the conceptual ideas. But there's three main parts to the water cycle, and that's precipitation, evaporation, and condensation. And the temperature at which air is saturated and condensation occur. Condensation is the process by which a liquid or a state of matter of water goes from a gas to a liquid. Okay. So it's kind of like when it's in the clouds after it's evaporated and it's going from a gas into a liquid. Okay? Let's look at our next definition. So dew point is just the temperature at which water is saturated and condensation, or the process of condensation, can occur. Precipitation. Precipitation is defined as water in the liquid or solid form that falls from the atmosphere falls from the atmosphere. Okay, and some examples of this are rain, snow, sleet. So when you think of precipitation, a lot of the times we just go to the mindset of thinking rain, but precipitation is anything that falls from the upper atmosphere towards the ground. So sometimes, even when it's really cold out, so the water isn't warm enough to be in a liquid state of matter, so it'll be in the form of snow or ice crystals and things like that. So it's anything liquid or solid state of matter that falls from the atmosphere towards the ground. Okay, let's look at our next definition. Our next definition is the water cycle. Okay. Water cycle is defined as the series of natural processes by which water continually moves among oceans land, at the atmosphere. Oh, and the atmosphere, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's the series of natural processes by which water continually moves among oceans, land, and the atmosphere. Now there are three main components to the water cycle, but there's a couple of other ones as well. So you have precipitation, which is when water falls from the atmosphere towards the ground. You have evaporation, which is when water turns from a liquid into a gas. And then you have condensation, which is when water turns from a gas and back into a liquid. One of the other ones that we're going to talk about is transpiration, and that is relative to plants, and that is part of the water cycle. Not a dynamic one, but or a dominating one, but we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so it is just the series of natural processes by which water continually moves among oceans, land, and the atmosphere. Let's look at our next definition. Our next definition is a high pressure system. High pressure system is a large body of circulating air with high pressure at its center and low pressure on the outside of the system. So a high pressure system is a large body of circulating air, which high pressure is at its center and low pressure on the outside is found on the outside of the system. In the next video, when we continue on with our definitions, we'll be comparing high pressure system to a low pressure system. But I'm going to stop the video there, and if you guys have any questions about any of these terms, please don't hesitate to message me and ask. I'm more than happy to elaborate or go into further detail. But in the next video, we'll be continuing with the second part of these definitions for Chapter 13. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please take good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks.